Okay.
I'm not able to. I just want to make sure we get that done. And I also want to make sure that you, are you going to record in the speaker view so they see Gabriel most, or, you know?
That's a great question. Okay, so I had the chat thing set up on the side for now, but I can change the view to make it better. I'm open to your suggestion.
In the top right corner, you'll see speaker view, and that way whoever is asking a question will be full screen, and then Gabriel will be full screen when he answers. I mean, it's cool to see everyone, but I think we're going to have a lot more people. We may not see everybody anyway in the gallery view.
Okay, and we need to
that many people, usually the screen splits and you get on the side, it says, you know, 1 of 2 or 2 of 3 or something.
Okay.
Yeah, can't see everybody at the same time.
Right.
We want to share Gabriel's screen and give Gail permission. Okay.
And Becky, do you want to do it too? You might have that better quality.
Okay, so I might just need a little direction on how to share that permission for recording.
Becky, you can jump in. You usually do that. I'm going to step away a sec.
Okay.
Sure. So if you go over, let me see. If you go over my video, my window, and hover on it, let's see. Oh, you know what? I usually do this when I'm the moderator, so I don't know that I can. If you hover over somebody's name at the top, okay, at the top right, there are the 3 little dots. And you, wait a minute. Okay.
I will be right back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Go, Laura, go to participants on the bottom. Click on
Okay.
participants. Okay, so you see the name. Okay, so hover over my name and then go to the blue box that says more.
Okay.
And you should be able to give me permission to record.
Okay, Becky. Allow record. I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Super.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to all the other people whose faces have appeared on the screen that we didn't say hello to, but we recognize you. Thank you.
And then,
Glad you're here.
hello.
Hello. Laura, you're hosting, right?
I'm hosting. Welcome, everybody. And Gabriel, do we want to set up your screen share for your slides?
I do.
Okay. And I just am trying to remember how we did that. Multiple participants or advanced sharing, maybe multiple. Okay, I think you're enabled there now. Let's see.
Hello, good morning.
Hi. Hello.
Good morning.
All right, I'm getting close.
So Laura, you're okay with them having Becky's all set up?
Okay.
I see I'm not set up to record, but as long as you have one, it's okay.
No, that's okay. Let's do that. Okay, now thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, good.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can you feel the adrenaline pumping? I can. You have your morning cup of Joe. Convenient in my yin-yang, perfectly balanced dualism cup.
Looks a little more yin than yang.
All right, getting ready. Ready for the show. Okay. Oh, Rachel Glick is there too, and Lindsay. Good to see when you come in. Hi, DJ.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, Muriel.
Muriel, I didn't see her coming. Oh, there she is. Wonderful.
Hi, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
All right, take it away.
Okay. You ready?
Save the shameless marketing till the end.
It's up to you, mister.
Okay, fine. Welcome. I'm glad you're all here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to gather around the fireside and share the stories of the homeland, the beckoning from beyond. Its pull never quits, does it? So I have a small PowerPoint presentation entitled, "Are You Who Is to Come?" which is one of my favorite queries from the biblical tradition of the disciples asking John the Baptist if he's the one that everybody's looking for. And he says, no, but I love that question. Are you who is to come? Are we the people who pass the buck to other people, or are we embodying what we want to see in the world? So I understand the metaphors. Language is a lot of metaphor. The story, the pictures, the images, the symbols, which is why this whole thing for me is so exciting, because it's an inexhaustible wealth of ways to think about life and reality. So I have some messages I'd like to share with you from my ritual elder mentors in the male lineage. I have some reminders from Professor Jordan Peterson from Toronto. And I have some meta sharings from Awakening Joy from my friend Jamie Barris, who helped start Spirit Rock, the Vipassana Meditation Center out in Marin County, as a kind of broad-based understanding to feed, every time we have a Dharma satsang, it's like the Forrest Gump of spiritualities. You never know what you're going to get, in the chocolate box, and how far along people might be in their practice or inquiries, or if something's up in their life right now that's really, really challenging, if they're going through a dark night of the soul, where things that have worked before aren't working now, or just in the periodic way where something is coming to an end, a new chapter has to be begun, but it's not there yet. They're in the transition, like letting go of the trapeze at one point, and just trusting when you're in the midair and there's nothing there, that when you make the turn, the person will be there to catch you, or whatever it is in terms of leap of faith. So, and then we'll go into the "Are you who is to come" thing. And I hope that this is peppered with enough yoga, but not limited to yoga, so that the variety of tastes that we have out there will some way be wedded and encouraged to come out. So, to begin, I know that this whole thing, the spiritual apothecary, this really gets interesting. After doing this for so many years, I don't hire out like a PR person to write my copy. I'm sick and tired of saying the same thing. How many different ways can I describe hip and knees, neck and shoulders, tighten the corners, weaken in the core, I have to come up with new things. So that in itself is very, very challenging. So I said, multifaceted and multimodal. That was the first two words I used. And then I'm trying to connect this idea of yoga's holistic approach to wellness to the latest kind of scientific bio-neurological or biochemical aspect of how our brain functions and the states of consciousness it goes through and so forth. So all of the disciplines now have some scientific corroboration relative to train your mind, change your brain. So that the very rewiring, right? If they fire together, they rewire together. You create something with these positive techniques. It's not just some pie in the sky. People just don't know. This is like, when you hear someone talking like that who has no experience, it just reminds me of Mr. Enger turning around to whoever's around and just simply saying, they are not knowing. And you realize it cuts through right away. This is a person that's, they're talking out of their ass. And, you know, when you're with a master who knows and is embodying it, like, you know, it's so apparent. It's like, you know, wearing cement and somebody's naked. I mean, come on. So this is what's called attention density. Attention density. Occupying your attention to such a degree simultaneously in a number of areas that all of a sudden you make a breakthrough and old patterns drop away, and then new ones are kind of like hardwired in, and they fire in their own way. And of course, just as there's an amygdala part of our brain that hijacks us in terms of fear and constant being on the lookout for what might snuff you, and it's old and powerful and instinctive, and it's happening below consciousness. We don't need consciousness for this to work. But there's also another part of your brain that's primed on intention, which is called sankalpa in yoga. And it looks for everything in the environment that could fulfill that intention. So it's like the other thing, but in reverse. Instead of always looking, and we'll get back to this in joy, you know, because this is what sabotages your joy, because you're looking for the wrong thing. Nonetheless. So I like that idea, but this is what I really liked. I shared this with Laura. The apothecary, I just happened to look it up. You know, every time there's a word, I'd like to hear how somebody else pronounces it. You look it up and, you know, on Google, whatever, and then the, looks like a sound device comes, you click that on and someone says it, and then there's a little explanation of it. And then if you want to, you can go further and see the etymology of the word. Really fantastic. Again, rectification of society begins with rectification of language. Keep studying. This is part of our ongoing literacy, computer literacy. This is the wave of the 21st century. We have to continue to go in this way, whether we're free to go outside or not. We have to recognize the importance of technology and stay aware as much as we can of AI and nanotechnology, whatever, and the critique we have to make on all the old fundamentalist religions that did not have to face that. And so they tried to maintain the status quo, but they're not hip and going with what we need to do to go forward as a global society. Nonetheless, apothecary turns out to be not just the place or the location, like the pharmacy. Apothecary is the person who actually makes the medicines initially for themselves and then distributes to others. So I like that idea because it also represents for me, at the end of this thing, I'm going to ask you all, so what myth are you living? Very similar question that Carl Jung asked himself when he was at a crossroads in his own life and really working with active imagination, his own fantasy images, right? His own dream images, his own mythological images, his own symbols, and not just in relation to psychotherapy and his breaking away from Freud, but also in the collective understanding, in the things that once you penetrate the code, once you understand how to read symbols. And just as a sidebar, as an ex-professor, I have to footnote you, Heinrich Zimmer, Z-I-M-M-E-R. He was one of Joseph Campbell's mentors. His stuff on Indology and symbology, second to none. Wonderful. So an apothecary, so I said, what's one, and I don't want to limit myself or anyone to one myth, but one of the myths I'm really conscious of is the wounded healer. You know, I hurt my back when I was 15. And again, for the people who don't know me and haven't studied with me, just a little disclaimer here. Everything I say is all about me, but there's nothing personal in it. So it's to you to find the associations in your life of what am I trying to get to by saying that. I'm not asking you to study my autobiography. But I hurt my back at 15 and I have never been the same. I can say I can't remember what it was like to not live in a body that was compromised at a musculoskeletal level, let alone all the other slings and arrows of outrageous gravity that have happened to my body and all the things I've done since then with contact sports and crazy yoga postures and whatever, and then some kind of deterioration as I've gotten older. So I'm no stranger to having to deal with it, so to speak, and understanding the battle that happens, that if your health is not as available as it could be, it limits in some way your sadhana. And so they're not pushing you because you can do unbelievable things without hatha yoga and other aspects of physical yoga that are truly yogic and serve you and are spiritual and whatever. But they also limit you. I mean, Mr. Iyengar always used to quip people, they say, oh, just chant mantras, sit. Yeah, but by the time they're 50 and 60, their body's racked with pain. They can't sit still. They can't chant the mantra. So if your spine was strong and your muscles were relatively comfortable, and thanks to him, now we have the whole props industry that really gives nobody an excuse, whether it's sitting, lying, reclining, whatever, to find some comfortable position that they can't recline in. Come on, I don't buy that at all. But each one of us has a different kind of karma, a different kind of genetic background. I get it. So, if health is important, great, but it's no excuse not to practice in some way. So I need it for myself, and as many other people who might claim to have some kind of healing virtue, it comes from their own life, the authenticity of what I do to get myself into this position. I'll gladly share, even for no money. I love this so much. I don't want money for this. It's such a gift. And for those of us who've been in the field, where it's been our livelihood, we've all had to overcome the dualism of love of money and staying in business. And yet, of course, I'm not working to make money, like profit, hand over fist. But yet, if you have a family, it forces you to capitulate yourself to what's going on. So why I like to do this is, first of all, to remind myself, this is the strength I need. This is the strength I need to get up every day and do whatever I have to do and face what I call the constant and grave in human life, and still find some kind of joy amidst that, and commiseration with the people whose suffering is greater than mine if I come in contact with them in that moment. So, to begin, first from my intellectual mentor, Jordan Peterson from Canada, one of the things I liked about this man is his standing up to the universities about gender pronoun issues and freedom of speech. Happened about 5-6 years ago in Canada, but he has some really interesting things as a psychologist and a student of a number of other philosophical tributaries that flow into my river as well. So I resonate with a lot of what he has to say. So one of the things he has to say is, or that I'm taking from him, is the philosophy of individual responsibility. And this is really one of the things about not just the Me Too generation, it's all about me, but in yoga, the buck stops here because there are practices to do. The words and the concepts are great. And yes, I've learned things from teachers that have taken me to places maybe I wouldn't have been able to go myself, or not as quickly, but inevitably, the rubber meets the road. What's your practice? And whatever you practice, you're going to get good at. And if you look at the Yoga Sutras, they give you plenty of things to focus on. Anything that's a suitable object for concentration and brings your mind to calmness, makes the vrittis less, kosher by then. So you don't have to get into a fight of what's the traditional practice? Whatever you find, but you got to do it with devotion over time. What is yoga, right? Again, I don't know. It even says in the Vedas, it talks about scriptures, or even then, maybe no one knows. Not what people worship here, certainly not that. But it's whatever is the highest good that you can conceptualize and striving to live it, unless you can find something better to do, which is the expectation that somehow this is going to purify your life, if we hear that word in the right way, and upgrade us to a better level, a clearer level of perception, a more satisfying level of perception. And when we get to joy, it doesn't mean that you only have positive thoughts. Please, don't be stupid. But a different way of interacting with life as a result of this. So you aim at the highest good, you try to inhabit it, and believe it or not, again, the world shifts around your aim. When we say you prefer your moves, you can't always have everything, but you can't pretend you don't have a preference. And then to a great extent, if you have some kind of personal power, and all of yoga is consolidating your power, not frittering it away, then you can design your environment a little bit more. And yes, it's influenced by the external factors, but most of us would probably admit that as a result of being involved in yoga prior to where we were before doing yoga, a better class of everything has come into our life. The people who we've met, working conditions, breaks. We've recognized how to take advantage of things rather than down elevators that people never recover from. In other words, resilience, and so forth. Now, what does it mean to engage in heroic behavior? Because sometimes I have these little seminars. The yogi is shaman, the yogi is devotee, the yogi is mystic, the yogi is social worker, the yogi is psychotherapist, the yogi is the hero or the heroine. Well, not just Joseph Campbell's hero myth thing of like separation, trials, and then reincorporation. It's an ongoing sense of making it as good as possible wherever you are that makes it better for everyone. It's a very wide berth of what that really means. Because for those of us in the trenches of life, which is everybody, it's in menial things. Very, very Mother Teresa. You can't do a lot of big things, but you can do small things with great love. And then you can collaborate. And that's where momentum builds. And then, you know, again, I'm not a pessimistic person, but going into the, you know, the precession of the equinoxes fantasy, the Aquarian age is not for another 100, 150 years. So when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then peace will guide the planets and love will rule the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, age of Aquarius, 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 and so forth. And so just the other day, because my wife bought me a set of, like, you know, CDs from the 60s. You know, one of those things you can only see on TV. You cannot buy this in a store. So every day I take it out and I play one song and I remember every single one. It's like uncanny, even though it was 50 years ago. So that was the Fifth Dimension. Remember that? And I always like to remind everybody that I did take my wife and kids to see Hair. And I did jump up on stage at the end to sing Let the Sun Shine. I did not take my clothes off because I knew that would embarrass them way too much. But I was on stage, okay? So there. Anyway, so we're all facing, as a result, this is what Jordan Peterson is saying, recognize that we are already in a damaged structure. The structure was damaged long before Trump got into office, long before the pandemic. So let's be real about that. It was dead already and corrupt. But that's an archetypal structure. The stories talk about the wasteland, you know, or the king being wounded, so there's no generativity. It's not flowing with milk and honey. Something is impeding, blocking, obstructing, distracting away from what's going on. So it's Mordor, you know. And of course, all young people will always rebel against it, as they should. But we ought not to be taking it personally. Then we misunderstand the mythic quality of what we're going through and the archetypal fantasy surrounding it, whether it's the end of the world, Armageddon, you know, or the utopian dream of progressive materialism. 150 years from now, it'll really be good. So we're right now, depending on where we are, you know, step 3 to step 4, other places are pulling back. Everybody wants to go ahead. And yet, from a creative level, we must not be just stuck into the walled castles of the medieval part of ourselves that's undergoing the bubonic plague. You know, the plague was also a precursor to the Italian Renaissance. Don't limit what happened, the pivot that humanity made in the 13, 14, and 1500s only to art, literature, and the rediscovery of the ancients, the translations from Greek and Arabic and Latin, you know, to the vernacular. So we're all at another time of creativity. So it's time to sally forth, as they would say, from the walled city, from the protection, and create. And each one of us will have a different way and different speed at which we're going to do that. But create, we must, because that's what we do, for no other reason. Is there destruction amongst the creation? Of course. But we're just like the goldsmith, just like makes new objects and then melts it down just because the glory is just in the creating and not necessarily the selling of it. So that gets us into doing actions of pure being. Again, so that then brings us to this next thing, you know, always the struggle for me is asking the question, what's the meaning of life? I could ask it in 7 different ways and use yogic versions of it, you know. What is Brahman? How is Atman Brahman? What happens when you've exhausted saying neti, neti, neti for 40 years? What's left? Is there anybody who's ever saying it to begin with? If they want to give you take self-nullify till you don't even exist. All right. But then as my Jewish grandmother would say, I know there's no self, but whose arthritis is this? So when I ask what's the meaning of life, I'm really saying what's the positive meaning of life? Because I know what the negative meaning of life is. I don't need to sit in front of a Zen Roshi and bow down and say, what is the meaning of life, Roshi? Life is like a boat that goes out to sea and sinks. You are dismissed. Right. I need another kind of help. And so that brings me to the next thing, which is still what Jordan Peterson is sharing. It's another one of my messages. I have to have some humility about my ignorance. I mean, yoga starts off right by saying, avidya is number one. The first thing that they're telling is, you don't know. You're in an active state of not knowing reality. I'm not talking about, did you tune into CNN or compare what Tucker Carlson said to, that's not what I'm talking about. That's another manufactured story. Yoga has its manufactured story about what's reality. You know, for those who said, it's the big mirror in the back, right? The empty mirror, not the small mirror that reflects your ego, personality, and psychology, but what consciousness is when stripped of all content. That's their game. So pride, my own personal pride, is what prevents me from seeing my insufficiencies, the stuff I don't want to see, the stuff that all of ego psychology helps me build up. And yet, of course, all the teachings say the ego is the thing that gets in the way. Even if our moth says it wants to get to the flame, right? The pane of glass between the moth and the flame is the ego. And how transparent can you make it until you're willing to dive into that? Wow, what a mystic image of like self-annihilation, you know? So I try to distinguish intelligence from wisdom. Being smart and being wise are not necessarily the same thing. And again, I think that yoga does both. It makes you intelligent in a certain way and also gives you connections to one definition of wisdom is seeing the interrelationships between things. Yoga as the union or the connection of all these different limbs into a certain kind of integrated lifestyle. Similar for me. So in my humility, it teaches me to take care of myself as if I am somebody of value and recognize that same human value in other people. Because once I start getting in touch with my own pain and my own vulnerability, I immediately connect to other people's pain and vulnerability. It's as if like, you think you can hide that? Remember John Lennon's line, one thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside. So each one of us has a tell, and usually more than one tell, of how when we show up with our particular style and vernacular, because remember, everybody suffers in a different way. Everybody experiences this suffering in a different way. Everybody expresses their suffering in a different way. Everybody communicates or holds back, and all levels of how it influences you because of the strong emotions, and especially the things that are traumatic and really shameful. Wow. And then we're all integrating it as best as we can, and every other human being is too. That's a lot, but it takes one to know one. You recognize that. You see a compadre, and sometimes we don't bring it up to other people, but it's there. So one of the first things I've learned, back to rectification of language again, is stop saying words that make you sound weaker than you are. Say words that are in alignment with the best that you have. Now, again, for the new people who haven't studied with me, don't think I'm so naive to think like, oh, you're just going to go through life like blithely saying nice things. Oh, really? No. What I suggest is that you deal with what I call the shadow work, the unpleasant emotions, the uncooked seeds, the long-held habitual patterns that don't serve you, the vices, the addictions, the flaws, the snafus, whatever you want to call it in your own life, if you're honest, and the various kinds of skills you have or don't have in dealing with that, in relationships with various amounts of people. When we get to the men's chamber, you know, I'll show you how this, your health chamber is connected to dealing with all these things, all right? Instead of putting on the back burner, pretending it didn't happen. And at the beginning, you know, you got to break through, you got to take a nosedive into the ashes. But I suggest you do that in what I call a sacred space, in the therapy office, in a 12-step group, with a bunch of people who you get together just for a consciousness skull session, or maybe even a reading group, and you pick material that's going to foster some kind of psychomotive self-revelation in a really bold, raw way, but it's in a contained space, a held space, so you could get it off your chest and feel supported by other people when they see what your inner world is, and minimize the shame, maybe even heal some of the trauma connected to that, and then free that from its inhibition on your life in the present moment. When are you going to let that go? What are you justifying allegiance to that? Why does that have to be carried on one more minute? And then again, you'll see this, how it feeds into the joy thing later, right? You think there's a joy, a happier joy somewhere else. So that's why you're still searching. Yet all the things you've read about going within, realities in the moment, investing attention like a magic wand in whatever you're doing, that's what brings it alive. Withdrawing your attention is dull, boring, withering. Still looking somewhere else is a hard thing to do, because then you're on your own again, the path with no railings. This is why you are supposed to have a teacher, hopefully in the flesh, if not in fantasy or on the astral plane. Somebody whose confidence and strength arcs over to you, the ability to say you can do it, and not always wanting to be sucking the nipple from the sky. Unless, of course, you're a bhakti yogi or a Vedantist, and you can say there are 3 things you can do. They all get you there according to Ramakrishna. You can just completely say, God is everything. Or you say, God is there and I'm an embodiment of God. Or you can just say, God is the master and I'm the servant. Whichever way you follow, it doesn't matter. It negates yourself and puts spirit in the boss position, so to speak. So I guess you could get there. So watch the words. So that's all I'm saying. Now, next thing is that connected to the zeitgeist of all time. In the Jewish tradition, they have the phrase called tikkun olam, the healing and reparation of the broken heart of the world. That is the ultimate phoenix rising idea. The world is so broken, right? Not just now, even for the time of the Buddha. What was he telling us? Look around you. Do you not see the suffering? So we've made movements in pestilence and famine and war and technology and stuff like that, but has it really changed the basic suffering of millions of people, tens of millions of people across the world, even though we're doing so much better? Yeah. Do you not feel that? Who wants to feel that? It's intolerable. That's why I say the unbearable compassion of the Buddha. How can you open your heart to that? So usually you feel like you want to work for that. You want the bodhicitta. You want to make some kind of vow to say, everything I'm doing, even with the selfishness that I know I still have, I would love to be the benefit of all beings, to get into that kind of metta state. If any good that comes into my life could be transferred instantaneously to whoever needs it without me directing it, let that be my wish. If wishing still worked, right? If you really believed in prayer, right? You'd be sending that vibe out because you'd feel for everybody. So, healing and reparation of the broken heart of the world. It's a big job. Bodhisattva type, right? Yeah. But you don't have to go that far. All right. What my male mentor elders want me to tell you, since most of you will probably never be privy to the inside of a men's circle and the power and love and active listening, even though it may not sometimes come across that way in our relationships, but in the men's circle, which is not just safe, there's edginess there as well. First thing is a reminder, just like, chanting a mantra, the first thing they say when you get in spaces, there's no other place you have to be. There's nothing else you have to do. There's no one else you have to serve. This is the time for you. Just really be here. So say a little prayer for yourself. Because if you don't even know why you came here, just ask your spirit inside.
I thought if you did, I have one quick thing to fax, otherwise I'll have to go.
Somebody's loud in the background. You can mute them, whoever that is. We're not going to go into holotropic breathing tonight. If you've never done one of these breathing sessions, where it's basically like hyperventilating yourself till you have like, you know, a schizoid break. It's like, it's insane, you know. But I remember the first time I did this, the person says, listen, I'm a certified health professional. This will not kill you. Okay, so I took the chance. What it really teaches you is, and watch this connection again to language, words, and joy. Breathe life into your story. It's asking to have life breathed into it. And your breath is what helps it not to stay secret. So that's what, again, do pranayama. It'll affect you in so many different ways every day. Every day. You got plenty of time on your hands. And that's always the fantasy. I do more yoga if time permits. Yeah, well, now time is permitting much more than you had before. So walk the talk. Now, when we keep things secret, it's bottled up inside us, and then we, in some way, we hide it. And we hide it because somewhere we're ashamed of it, we're not proud of it. But when we go into the men's circle, the first thing you understand is spirit already knows. The cat's out of the bag. So why do you think you're alone in this? As if somehow this is secret from spirit. And you're familiar with this spirit. You know it. And you also accept that it loves you. And it knows your gifts. So I ask you right now to acknowledge the beautiful light that you are. And I ask you to acknowledge the beautiful love that you have. Because that's what the elders that I hang out with want you to do and know about yourself. It's okay to admit that I don't know what another person needs. But I can ask questions, and hopefully they can tell me. Accountability and integrity are two words that we wrestle with in men's work, which is similar to walking your talk. You say what you mean what you say, your actions back it up, you substantiate your claims by how you live your life. You don't explain or make excuses. When you realize you've done something that you know you can do better than, you admit it right away. Take responsibility for making it up in some way to the relationship with the other person with an act of service. And then if you do that, you understand what integrity is. To be okay with yourself because you're living the values that are most significant to you and not breaching your own contract with yourself. And when you're out of integrity, how do you hold yourself accountable? Or do you have people in your life who will hold you accountable if you're out of integrity with them? Because in this work, being out of integrity with yourself does not serve you. And that means you have to also challenge the shadow agreements, which are unspoken in your life. Things that we've set up for ourselves that no longer serve us, but we still keep the habit going because we don't know any better. And there's fear, there's risk of letting go because of the story we tell ourselves of the bad thing that would happen if we did. So one of the things that becomes what I call the knife in the heart that stops you from carrying on aspects of this game with ourselves that doesn't serve is recognizing that trying to fix your sorrow is a lost cause, especially when it comes to judging another person and wishing they were different than how they are. Ain't gonna happen. It's a bottomless well. So the first thing my mentors recommend is resign from that position. Resign from trying to make someone into something they're not. Now, in your daily life, you want to look for the dilemma. And this is the key points to be kiviv, on the alert for. Number one, is there a pattern that persists in your life? That means it shows up daily and it has an emotional charge to it. So it's been there a long time, it's in your face, and boy, it's like triggers you to something comes up with that. And it's a lose-lose situation. You and the other person involved, you both don't get what you want. You know, and I used to say, yes, it reminds me of relationships I used to have with my brother, where I didn't stick up for myself. I didn't use my language to draw boundaries between him and me. He didn't like my power, so I backed off. And I carried that on for a long time till I understood the dilemma connected here. If I speak my mind, he disappears or shuts down. If I don't speak my mind, I'm having an inauthentic relationship with this person. You know, all we're talking about is sports and movies, and there's no interest in learning what's really going on inside the other person. And that's not okay with me. At least it wasn't at that point, right? So that's the idea, dilemma. Persistent pattern in your life, usually daily, has an emotional charge connected to it, and there's a lose-lose scenario. And that's where you have to talk about feelings to people. Okay, you know, I always say, right, beware of psychological spiritualities and beware of spiritual psychologies. All spiritual teaching ought to have numerous ways of dealing with your personal application to your own psyche and its relationship to other people in your life. I always say relationship is the yoga of the West. And if you go to the ashram, whatever, right, make sure that the spirituality, if you go to the psychology way of looking at yourself, make sure that it includes the spiritual longings part of yourself. It will still lack the wholeness if it doesn't take into account one part of you that wants to understand this beckoning from beyond, however you choose to frame it. So if you're going to speak about your feelings, get ready for conflict is the beginning of consciousness, is what the feminists say. And sharing your feelings is a minefield. A lot of stuff blows up because if you've been holding on to this stuff, it takes skill for it not to come out in an explosive, the magma chamber has built up so much, it comes out with volcanic force. And that's why people are so afraid of it. So it takes skill to learn how to access it appropriately and express it adequately. Okay. Now, next thing, two more things from my male mentors. I never realized what a whore I was for affirmation. I wanted to be I was such a people pleaser and ass kisser. I mean, and still the way I try to have it set up so I can appear in the best limelight, it's frightening. But although I see that kind of narcissistic dance at one level, I will not shame my little boy. And what I learned from my little boy is my need, and I want to understand the difference between saying, I need something, and then the neurotic way to say, I need, no, not that kind of need. And how that transfers over into the need you have as a prepubescent or an adolescent male or a young man or an aging young man or a middle-aged man, and go forth, right? And that need is never to be shamed or equated with greed. That if I put it out and I want more love, don't you tell me I'm greedy or even needy. You're not in touch. So, I hope you understand that it's okay to ask for what you need and to be a person who recognizes you have needs, and how it's a scary and vulnerable place to be. but it makes you a human being. And unless you see that this path is supposed to transcend your humanity, as long as I got one foot in the material world, I'm going to recognize that and not put myself down for it. So out of that, make quality of life choices, everybody, not because they lead anywhere. Be reminded that we're all accountable for the pleasures that we're supposed to have and don't take advantage of. And then finally, let people know that you're blessed by them. Be a blesser. All right, now I move to my joy section. And I'm still working on affirmations. Still working on my affirmations, adding more to my archives. Do you have to go to the Buddhist metta meditations or chant mantras that open your heart to sit for a moment in silence and say your equivalent of, I open my heart to the universe and I accept love and peace? Or as when I used to go to the church with my wife and they would say, sing the song, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Remember that, Laura? Okay, right. I don't know, maybe it was only in the St. Giles Parish. I don't know. I'm going to make a comment on liturgy later on. So I don't know how homogenous from church to church every service was. I mean, there are certain things that were probably the same, but all right. So remember I said we want to find that part in our brain that through intention starts looking in the environment for good things. So it's as if we shift from what could go wrong to what's the best thing that could possibly happen in this situation. So one primes the pump of a different kind of radar scanner in your brain. And remember, the amygdala is old and it's not even conscious. So I don't want to try to pretend that we're going to expunge it because it has a pro-life value. Looking out for the things that could do you in. That's important to have somebody championing you that way. But you don't want it so nervous and in your face that it takes over everything. It's great if it's on a distant early warning system and can give you conscious choice to shut it down. But that could be helped by this other part of you that's actively looking. Now, many people have gotten disappointed by attempting to be happy and joyful and not have the skills to understand how to deal with it in the midst of a pandemic and just life shit in general. And not everybody has the skills and wherewithal and financial background and good karma, you could say, to take the hit, to take the buffetings and lift themselves up again and again and brush themselves off and go back and have friends or have things work out. So for those people, they'll just say, who am I fooling? I'll just be disappointed again if I try this. Yeah, and then how can I bring joy back? The yes, but game. You try to tell somebody saying, they say, yes, but right. Yeah, how can I bring joy back into my life when? And they tell you the reason, right? Which always means I have to take a problem that doesn't exist in this moment and exhume it, bring it into the moment, start talking about it here now as if it's real, even though right now, right here, it isn't. And then the facilitator stop where right now, could you just stop that and not talk about it just for right now? Just for right now, you could? Okay, so could you do that? Yeah, when? And then they start the next level of telling you why they can't do it. Right. So let's say we're not going to block ourselves in being open to accepting love and peace and the battle. All right, so, and again, you don't deserve it. Oh, that's really at the rock bottom when it comes out like that. Holy shit, right? How did you get so twisted to the own depth and warmth of your own humanity? Can you imagine any little baby being born and coming out and what their really first thing is, I don't deserve to be here? Or maybe, is that happening to a cracked mother? I don't know. I don't get that. I think it's a learned behavior. Love is a learned phenomenon. Anyway, but your sabotaging patterns become more evident. And again, if you can make patterns that sabotage you, why can't you make patterns that serve you? And of course, all of yoga or attention density, occupying yourself with yama and niyama, asana, pranayama, deep relaxation, meditation, service, study, devotion, mystic contemplation, and just enjoying life, giving everything you got to what's right in front of you, fully honoring the gifts with gratitude and helping as many people as you possibly can, or whatever it is that gets you on full throttle? What keeps you vitally alive? What's the dream you're pursuing? That stuff. All right, so. But it's really important to do this in order to fail. Don't I tell my students all the time, fail joyfully? You think I'm only talking about a pose you can't do? You have to come up again and again against what? Against the contrast between how you actually are and where you want to be. It becomes painfully obvious, but this is a good thing. Because becoming aware of it in this way, we start to understand the conditioning we're dealing with. And when we don't recognize these negative voices inside ourselves, we're under their spell with little idea of how powerful and persuasive they are. So never think that failing, right, it's a temporary setback on the road. It teaches you something, a lesson you learn, and then you move on from that. So that gives you boldness, that gives you confidence, because just because it didn't work out doesn't mean it's over. This is not your whole life. All right, so next thing is people get waylaid by believing that awakening joy means only having positive thoughts. No, more of the time, you know how to keep your head and let it rise to a high place, but it doesn't mean that every thought you have is like, ecstatic. That's stupid. But what you want to learn is that the part of you that advocates for, I can't be joyful, is stuck in a prison of predictability. And each one of us does things to control or maintain the illusion of control, because we like the story that we tell ourselves, hanging on to the illusion that this gives me control. So we all have heard the phrase stretching beyond your comfort zone. So start to look more and more at what you do in a predictable way and break your mold. Do something. It doesn't have to be big. Chop with the left hand. Walk on the other side of the street. Throw your coat on the floor instead of on the coat rack. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. Just don't be exactly the same way you are every single day in everything you do. Now, neuroscience tells us that setting an intention primes, that's their word, our nervous system to be on the lookout for whatever will support what we intend to create for ourselves. Said simply, Ram Dass used to say, desire is intention. Right? If a pickpocket meets a saint, all that they say are their pockets. So what you want conditions how you look in your environment. If you're first chakra oriented, you're looking like, I got to take a dump and take a whiz, right? If you're second chakra oriented, you see who's makeable and who's irrelevant. If you're third chakra, or, who can I dominate? Who might dominate me, right? If my heart is, who's open, who's touchy-feely, and who's creepy, and I got to, and so forth. Each chakra has its voice. It talks to you in a certain way, and it could be scanning for, because they're all imperialists. They all want to take you over and make you see it through their view, which is why it's important to see what consciousness is free from content. So life is always presenting unexpected circumstances, obstacles as well as opportunities. Remaining aware of your intention. This is why yoga is a sankalpa. It's your default existence. I'm all over this every day of my life. No one has to impose this on me from outside. Your intention helps you more readily recognize from the multitude of options life offers, those that support your vision. And it's a really tautological thing. The more you learn to do the things that support your own vision, the more it'll become so apparent, how come other people are not supporting their vision? Or how did they end up supporting this vision? Since it doesn't seem to serve. And after a while, you'll simply turn to your friends and say, they are not knowing. And so again, back to ignorance. We're all trying to educate ourselves, learn continuously, and have as much compassion for the people who are still victims of vice, even though it influences us sometimes in a negative way. Anyway, if you're trying to get joyful on a schedule or in a particular way, rather than creating spaciousness that allows your natural joy to arise, you'll end up always assessing whether you're there or not. A lot of what we call happiness is lack of self-consciousness. Like I say, you're dancing naked in the room, someone opens up the door, you stop for a second. You don't want rear view mirror consciousness. You want to be able to live in such a way where I don't have to be checking on myself. So natural spaciousness means allow time for this. Even build it in if you have to. Don't allow the progressive materialism story. I got to be producing always more. What's next? What do I got to show for myself? Am I stocking away? I'm not going to say it doesn't have importance. You know, from Ram Dass's point of view, it doesn't matter what your life is from a spiritual point of view. Rich or poor, happy or sad, with people or alone, high in the hog or, you know, on the way under. Doesn't matter from a spiritual point of view. But that's why they say, but it makes all the difference in the world. So from a material point of view, yes, you choose and you design. And karma is a way of showing you there's a cause and effect. There's a lawful unfolding. There's a way of bringing order out of chaos. Does chaos ever stop intruding? No, it's one of the yin yang back and forth, you know, contract, expand, right? Make a boundary, burst the boundary, and so forth. All right, let's go toward the end here. Let's see if I can share my screen. And now I'm going to do this and you'll tell me whether or not I got it. All right. Can somebody tell me whether or not they can see the screen completely?
We can see it.
Oh, that's great. Oh my God. That was the smoothest I've ever done it. This is like a high point. All right. So here's my yogic finish. This is called Are You Who Is to Come? Even though I ramble about a lot of other subjects, I always like to use the yogic terminology. And there's so much in their philosophy because it's a worldview. It isn't just a practice that level. So the first thing you get inculcated with in the system is what's called the Purusharthas, the 4 aims of life. And this is just one way of spinning it. And I don't know why Kama is up in the front. You know, Dharma should be up in the front. Oh my God. Okay, so this is what they teach you. First, you're in the student stage of your life, and they teach you to align yourself with the cosmic harmony. They explain to you what the philosophy is all about and give you the principles to live by. And then while you go about your life, they tell you that 2 other aims will be, one is artha, accumulate some stuff. Even if you were a hunter-gatherer, you would have to get like your flintstone and your bow and arrow and your knife and your axe for, like, you know, shredding the tubers or whatever it is. You have to have some stuff, some clothes, something, right? A blanket. And then when you have what you need to survive, learn to enjoy yourself. There are so many beautiful gifts life can offer when it's working right. And you're accountable for every one of the pleasures that the Creator provides for you that you don't take advantage of. But it doesn't mean, of course, be a hedonist but a connoisseur. Just like being into artha and accumulating things doesn't mean makes you a hoarder or a greedy person. But they all filter into the teleology, the end result, and the soteriology, the doctrine of salvation, that's connected to their idea of moksha or freedom or liberation, which, whether you buy into reincarnation or not, they say possible for everybody, but apparently for only a rare few, in the lifetime that we see them incarnated as a human being. They do the Mahamudra and take the whole thing all the way to final enlightenment, like the historical Buddha. So these are the things that are in the background of what is the flywheel behind why yoga practices help you. They teach you the Dharma, and they say, go out in your life now and get what you need. Don't be greedy and enjoy yourself, but put it on a bridle of love. And all of that is going to serve as you get towards the middle and end of your life. But even though you don't know when the end of your life will be, reflect on these things right from the get-go. How are you going to be free? How are you going to embody living spirit while still in the flesh? Now, relampago, for you Spanish-speaking people out there, the lightning strikes. Oh, you just got the Kundalini hit, is that it? How does the power of the deity, called a hierophany, how does it break into your life? A kratophany is where it comes in with power. An epiphany is where it comes in with light, right? Different ways that the divine pitches itself to us. but we get knocked on our ass, and all of a sudden, like Saul, like Paul on the road to Damascus, right? I'm not even have that name anymore. Forget it. I'm a new person all of a sudden. So things happen, and part of yoga is getting accident prone to make these things happen more. Now, in our field, we worship Shiva, the Lord of yoga. Krishna is the Lord of yogis, but Shiva is the Lord of yoga. And he has all those different elemental, animal, sexual, vegetal, celestial symbols around him to indicate his connection to all these different diverse worlds. They're all ways of being transported into the realm of Shiva. And you see, he got the danda under his arm, on his left arm. That's his support, yoga danda. And he got a lot of beads on, he's chanting a lot of mantra. And he looks like he's off in the transcendent, even though he has his hand up in the fear not abhyasa gesture. And he's on Mount Kailash. He's up in the lofty heights, far away. This is the view of him as like, the solitary meditator. But again, he also have the lingam in front of him. And so he is also the cosmic phallus, unlike Buddha, who didn't claim the divinity part, but he's just like Shiva, right? He sat and used meditation as a way of getting out, but he's disconnected from Shiva as the lingam of the cosmos. All right, now I always talk about dancing the four quarters. I talk about the king, queen, and the male and female lover, the male and female warrior, and then the male and female high priest, high priestess. And you can see these are the shadow aspects of the king. The evil king is either a dictator or an abdicator if he's weak. The shadow warrior is either a persecutor or a person who is the victim. The shadow high priest is either the manipulator, the all-knowing person. The shadow high priestess is the negative one, the denier, to cheat other people. And then the addicted lover, the Don Juan or the nymphomaniac, the lover, the limp dick, or the ice cream. So these are the perversions of the parts of us that step into the archetypal power of the all-inclusive realm of the royal person, the realm of action, serving a transpersonal cause for the warrior, the realm of intuition and vision of the wizard and the crone, and the view of intimacy and affiliation to relate the love of it.
Hey, Gabriel, can people mute their mics?
Thank you. Someone in the background, please, if you don't realize your mic is not muted. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Good call, Larry. All right, then I always like to go through these stages of Erickson's psychosocial development. Really interesting, that the first stage is, you come into the world, and if there's an accepting environment, you get trust versus mistrust. And then as you start going out on your own and you start to crawl around and get into stuff, and the terrible twos come in, you learn to say no. Do they give you autonomy, or they shame you and make you feel doubt about moving ahead and touching and exploring? And then the next years is like, do they really allow you to tool around and learn everything, or there's constant barrier? Don't do that, don't touch that, shut up, don't do that. The way parents sometimes shortchange students. So is your initiative provoked, or you feel guilty about stretching your wings? Then you get to school and they really start grilling you now. They compare you to other people and you have to show you're industrious in some way. And if you don't match up because it's not right, or for whatever reason, it's just the wrong environment, teacher, material, whatever, right? So then you feel inferior. You're compared to other people, you're not measuring up. Now you take that into your teenage years when there's enough identity confusion. As your body is changing, your voice is changing. So do you know who you are at this point? No, you're usually with the tribe. You acknowledge roles that you play in a certain group, but then there's role confusion because maybe that's not who you really are, but you just go along with it. All right, so that's right. That's nice to take into your exploration of not knowing who you are, right? And then you get to be supposedly an adult in and out of school. And now the bonding thing, the intimacy wants to come up. Have you learned these skills, or has it been riddled with confusion, inferiority, guilt, shame, doubt, and mistrust? Oh, that makes for intimacy. No, you'll feel isolated even more. And then you take it into your older years, and you either learn through the older years how to be a generative person, because all the positive things work for you, or you start stagnating. You feel like I haven't done anything with this. And then if that's what you take on with you, you get into despair instead of some form of ego integrity. So I love that particular usage of looking at the life cycle. Now, this is one of my other old teachings that was an amazing thing about the UN asking the third world countries years ago, what's wrong? You know, how can we tell the first world countries so they can really get it? And they were saying they gave it to like a Filipino who had like very, very non-academic help, you could say, in bringing it to 4 different realms so that the thousands of pages of information was reduced down to like a page. And they basically say that there's cultural problems, economic problems, financial problems, economic problems, and visionary problems, ecological problems. People are feeling displaced all over the world. They're rootless. People are feeling that the corporations and the governments of the world do not reflect their needs, so they feel powerless. So, cultural problem, political problem, financial problems. So many people all over the world are jobless and turn to being ruthless as a result of getting their own. And there are a lot of people in our country not working right now. So go planetary. And then there are people who feel like, you know, what's the future? Look at the ecological stuff that's going on. People don't even want to admit anything is wrong. And they're in the power position. They just keep chunking right out with the carbon spewing and what? Really? Yeah. So futureless. So it's a world of less. And then if you want to know why people would strap bombs to themselves, it's because if you're rootless, powerless, jobless, ruthless, and futureless, life is meaningless. How do you recover from that? How do you find meaning when there are people who are like reminding you this is out there as well? Right, the password now is lost, the initiation full and free. Daily we pay the cost of showing slow schooling for our divine. Oops, I lost that. We know no means to feed an undying whatever. Our lights go out every wind. I can't get the whole picture on my thing here, sorry. Transforming the fire. Oh, I like this one. All right, now let's see your downward dog. Yeah, the Skull Mashers were a gang known for their cruel and inhuman initiation rituals. Yeah. So yoga teaches you some cruel and unusual initiation rituals, doesn't it? But it emphasizes the unity of the species. All right, next one. All right, this is what liturgy was. All right, sorry. Got to go back, excuse me. So what yoga really teaches is inadequate ritual response. That we don't know how to come together with people in both intrapersonal, within ourselves, interpersonal, with other people, intertribal, with people of different groups. Conflict resolution is so essential for any kind of species bonding. And again, just judge by the yoga classes. The people who you take classes with and see on an ongoing basis, you feel a bond for them. Yeah, all right, moving on. So liturgy, the work of the people. I don't know if this technical definition only applies certainly to Christians, but it's saying by Christian people as the chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, it's their right and duty by reason of their baptism. That's from the Church's Constitution on Sacred Liturgy. Well, liturgy is hardly transformative space. And the journey to the center gives the power. And that's why, for me, the yogis had so much influence in my life, because they were giving you practices. They weren't just giving you words and concepts. All right? So don't only accept liturgy. Get into practice. Words are beautiful, but you got to practice. All right, now, I suggest that you find a group of people you can sit with. There's no shame in healing wounds, but it needs a contained space. The old word was melancholy. The contemporary word is depressive, passive, addictive, suicidal. Melancholy is dealt with in all these stories. And so I'm going to remind you as we get towards the end here, sift through your ashes. The way to live responsibly and not sacrifice yourself for a bogus vision is understand what you come through. Nobody else but you knows that firsthand. And if you eat your ashes, you'll realize that we all have the potential to go radically beyond any abuse experience. All of us understand people don't relate well to scolding. So we have to empower each other's feeling of significance, right? Significance hunger is what I call for. And then look for the pattern interruption. So where are you in prison? Are you willing to ask the question, are you who is to come? And what's the answer to that question? And that's where we are right now. All right. We got 15 more minutes for some lively questions. Thank you for staying with this live, who knows, podcast Dharma rap. He didn't balance his meds. Call it, put whatever title you want on it. Nice to see you, Cheryl, too. And where's Larry Turner? Oh, lying down. Great. Hey, good. I've put people to sleep that way. It's fantastic.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing a lot of jewels with us. And I was really, really eye-opening and a lot of things that I really needed to hear. Thank you.
Celia, can you pick one thing specific to comment on?
I would say that where you talked about that you are in charge of you're responsible for your happiness, your body, and basically moving past any type of abuse that has been in your life or you have seen in your life at any point in your life. I think that's very powerful.
Thank you. You know, I try not to, there's not a guarantee for anything. Life, there's no guarantee, right? You know, but the idea is not paying attention to it so that, you know, your ego thinks it's driving, but it's really being driven. And again, the degree of different, you know, I'm reading a book that a friend of mine who's a sociologist at University of Texas gave me, Conflict is Not Abuse. And
Right.
how so many things can be construed as abusive and even get criminal activity, you know, ascribed to that when it's really the inability of people to handle conflict. You know, and they you know, and so again, this is one of the things we all have to learn how to do with our language. How do we handle negotiating things? And again, not everyone's going to do this at the legislative level. For most of us, we're just going to do this in the trenches of life with the people who we meet. But yes, if a person feels that the trauma or abuse that they have is significant enough, you got to get professional help. In the same way, like if you have a toothache, why aren't you're going to go to a dentist, right? You know, if you have an abscess, you're going to go to a doctor, right? Why? Because there are people who are competent in different fields, whether it's the flat tire in your car, you know, or whether it's, you know, every field has somebody who's capable of helping if we go there. So if you can do it by yourself, you know, I think it's wonderful. But again, you know, I'm a big fan of self-delusion. I don't want to think that I'm that clear. I think it's always helpful to have somebody else to feed things back off of and tell you what you don't want to hear.
Right. No, yeah, I believe that feedback is a gift. I really do. I'm always looking for feedback, and I feel like if I can make myself better and improve myself and elevate myself, I'm able to help and impact more people. And I just want to say thanks, Greg, for bringing this amazing man in to speak with us and just give us the truths. I do a lot of public national speaking. I'm a criminal justice reform advocate. I myself did time in prison when I was young. So I do a lot of trauma-informed care. I do, you know, a lot of work within the walls with the juvenile detention centers and the women prisons. And I'm actually speaking Thursday in front of Dick Durbin. I'll be speaking in front of the House of Representatives, asking them to pass the Pell Grant and allow people access to education in prison. And I was just speaking about how it's important to enhance someone's life while they're in there and outside, because it really, really performs a change within the inside. It connects you to the outside world, but it also enhances your life mentally and your well-being, because it allows for a shift in atmosphere and energy and focus and responsibility and accountability of their actions to go to school, you know, so it makes everything safer. So I really think that this was like a prep call for me. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's a great work that you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you revisit one of the first things you asked? What myth are you living?
Yeah.
Is that in a falsehood that we're living, asking ourselves that, or is it what story are you living?
Yeah. Say, what's the, well, again, if you use the word myth, like when you say, oh, that's an urban myth, you know, then it implies falsehood or lie. But when you see myth as metaphor, then you realize, no, it's a story that you're telling yourself. There's just different ways. Like the myth is the public dream, and your dream is the personal myth. That's one of Jung's ideas, right? So the myth originally represents instinctive patterns of brain development that then picture themselves through images for the conscious mind to understand. Remember I said that the amygdala is a part of your brain that's working below consciousness, right? It doesn't have to signal to your conscious mind, I'm working now, it just takes over, right? But the way the unconscious works is that it can outpicture or bridge to the surface through dream or mythology, stories created specifically to use these images that come from our own depth. And the stories connected to them have associations with how things actually work out in your daily life. So I gave the example of the wounded healer as an example, right? I can understand that myth from reading stories about people who they got injured in some way and then use their injury to heal themselves or pass on some knowledge or go in quest of something. It turned out not only to heal them, maybe they went out in quest to heal the sick king or bring back something to the land that was needed food or something like that. So again, a general healing motif could be there. So then it just gets into psychology in general. What's the story you're telling yourself that's really like your search engine? You know, it coalesces all the different timeline experiences in your life and then creates what you think is a solid self, your ego image, that's always referencing to something else. But it's telling itself a certain story of how it thinks it is or how it would like it to be. And it works towards keeping those images supported by other people, right? I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, right? So you tend to like people who support that or don't like people who disagree with you. So, but as you ask that question, you can see what's driving you. And a lot of times these are not thought out well because they're reactions to prior traumatic experiences where you did the best you could to survive or deal with abandonment or whatever it was that happened to you. And then you took on, this is general, I think, psychotherapy, a kind of inauthentic personality to make it. And so it learns to survive, but it doesn't learn to thrive. And to get to that next level, you have to call out the conditioning. Remember what I said about looking at the joyful things, right? Seeing how far the gap is between how you want to be and how you actually are. That's a good thing because it exposes to you the conditioning, the patterns, where you're stuck, and then you can work on it. Because when you're not paying attention to that, those images in your mind run you. And of course, other things run you at the same time. There isn't only one voice. Not that like you're schizophrenic by recognizing there are different voices. Like I said, remember, each chakra has a voice. I love Joseph Campbell says that the idea of the chakras is the organs of vying for supremacy amongst each other, rather than like projecting upon it like all these, you know, Hindu deities and the amount of lotus petals on each one and which one gets a bij mantra and all that, right? I like his idea of it, right? Simply say it, right? Your asshole has something to say, right? Your genitals has something to say. Your pupuk has something to say. Your cardiac area has something to say. Your throat and tongue have something to say. Your brain has something to say. And the electromagnetic field that surrounds you into the cosmic soup has something to say. They all got Me Too voices. Which one do you listen to? Anyway, so it's the story you tell yourself. And you got to disaccustom yourself to the story because you get very good at it. And you can tell it in a very poignant way where everybody will believe it. And then it's very easy to not have accountability for keeping yourself in the same place. That helpful? Thank you.
Gabriel?
Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you, and thank you. In the very beginning of your talk today, you were talking about we are loaded weapons, and we're referring to words. And one of the concerns that I have today is that I see in myself my reactions to just the world climate, what's going on, and what I see in the news. I find that I can become quickly reactive to that, and I'm just the other day I was reading a little bit of the Bhagavad-Gita, and in there the emphasis is on there's Krishna or Arjuna wanted to kind of retreat back into himself, and Krishna said, no, that's not wise. You have to take action. And so there's this reflective quality, but also this understanding that we need to take some kind of action, either the type that you've been talking about in your discussion. But I guess the question I'm asking is, we see all of this news and these things that are happening and they kind of bombard us, and we see what feels like just a lot of ignorance and misunderstanding. Do you have just a few more words to say about how to cultivate or maybe emphasize a sense of compassion without that compassion rendering you sort of inept?
It's a good question. Fortunately, I have a good answer for it. First of all, you have to find, as we all do, a balance between being somewhat aware of what's being put out on the national media or whatever your alternate media source is, and the story that it's connected to, which in its own way is a mythological, what I'm saying, it's connected to what I call progressive utopianism, all right? Things are always getting better, even though still may be shit right now, but it'll get better as time goes on. You just have to put up with it, with all the collateral damage. I don't buy that. I buy the yoga story. Now, doomsday trolling is something different. How much bludgeoning do you need to do on a daily basis that doesn't serve and doesn't add anything to what you already know? Well, that's on you. So that's infecting yourself like some kind of sadist. I have to do it to myself because what am I? I have white guilt that like I'm, buffered from all this stuff. So let me just feel really bad about it. No. Yeah, so that's called heroic analysis leads to paralysis. Just find out enough that you need to be aware and then put your mind and attention to the other things that are much more forward leading. That's one way to think about it. Yes, we all have to act, but again, not everybody's actions are going to be changing policy at a legislative level or, going to the soup kitchen or whatever you feel is your way of feeling you're making a difference, right? Things change very, very slowly. So again, the job of a yoga practitioner, again, is to, in a heroic way, I said, make it as good as you can for all those who are around you in the immediate environment where you are. And then based on your dharma, what's your way through? What's your passion? So now I'm assuming that you have a passion. Because if you don't have a passion, then no wonder why a person feels lost and has no direction. Because if you find you have a passion, you will contribute through that compassion. Right? And we all want to contribute. So this is another thing. So there's two separate issues, like educating a person to find out what they love to do so they can give their gift to the world. And the next one is applying what you find is your passion and how it can serve other people. Now again, why I like yoga is because we're not facing anything new. We may seem to be facing anything new, but again, every one of the scriptures you're talking about, let's say the Buddhist model, right? All right, so at least it goes back 2,500 years. What do they say? Greed, hatred, and ignorance, the three basic states of mind that cup your intelligence, and all of a sudden you're not good for anything because you're functioning with these rose-colored glasses on that are greedy, hateful, and stupid, forgetful, negligent, and all those other things, right? So that's any different now than then? That's because, again, they're looking at the big mirror. They want you to see something beyond the historical moment. Does it mean you're not actively involved? No, there's a lot of Buddhists that are involved in like eco-conservation and psychotherapeutic intervention and scientific study and, My friend's the guy who started the Spirit Rock. He's big in my face about, aren't you helping Wisconsin? They're a swing state. We're like, so if you want to be active that way, it's the other face that you have to what you do in your meditation. Again, my students know this. I say this all the time. I'm from the field. And again, there's many different ways. This is where you have to carry them off me. I'm not saying this is your way. Many different ways. What works for me is I get up really early in the morning and I do my practices before everything goes. And I go as far as I can into emptying myself to try to explore this mystery of what is this empty mirror that apparently they tell me I'm capable of, and that I only get glimpses of it. And I fail continuously. Didn't I say right at the beginning? Insufficiency. I'm faced with my big ego and my narcissism, my unwillingness, but I do that first, and then I kind of gird my loins. Hopefully I got as far out of my ego as I possibly could during that moment. And now I'm back in life, and I'm doing what I do in my daily life, hopefully empowered by, with some, I hope, more clarity than less clarity, more energy to continue the fight I've been doing ever since I discovered yoga, which is educating people in a lot of different ways and open-ended. Why? I don't know. That's just the teaching Dharma felt to me. First, because I had a teacher myself. And also, if you don't know my story, when I moved into an ashram out of the hippie commune, I didn't intend to be a yoga teacher. I didn't even know that the ashram was a teacher training ashram. You look back and you see your life was composed by events that you didn't seem to consciously set up. It's unbelievable that way. So it put me off in that Dharma, and other aspects of my personality might have jived with the exhibitionism necessary, the rajasic quality that a teacher has to put stuff out there. So I don't say I hide behind it, but I really believe yoga is the best future option for the whole world. But again, I don't mean yoga via Patanjali's eightfold system. I mean, what yoga teaches you as a symbol system, as a metaphor for, I said, the highest thing you can conceive of, and then you're attempting to live it. And then if you got something better to do, well, then drop this like a hot potato. That's why they call this the only dance there is. Remember Ram Dass's book? When you get on flame for this, nothing else is important, right? I said, either you see God is everything, or God is both everything and me, and the part that's God in me isn't really me, or I'm the servant and God. It doesn't matter. Get yourself out of the way, and then let the specific individual Dharma that you are as a unique subjective differentiation of spirit, right, come through, and you'll give the world what you have to give, and then generate positive stuff. Do what we're doing. Every time you speak to another person, you have a choice to like rehash old stuff and be a Debbie or a Dan Downer, and only point to the stuff that you don't want to see. And this is not denial. It's not like we don't know this is going on. That's not how I want to fuel my conversations. So elevate the conversation somewhere else, unless your Dharma is specifically talking about how we get this stoplight on this corner over here because it's right next to the school zone and traffic is going by too quickly. All right, well, do that if you want to do it. How are we going to build a city garden? I mean, the beauty of intelligence is everybody's smart in a different way. And it's kind of like the parting shot. Listen, no science, no technology can give us value and meaning, which is why people still look to religion or spirituality. But they're two very different things. Spirituality can flow with what I'm about to say. Fundamentalist religion cannot. All the people of the book are pre-technological mindsets, and they keep the status quo in a certain way.
Oh yeah, ice cream. Ooh.
They want to continue to share the teaching that maintains the hierarchy and authority that they've had since they've begun their tradition. It cannot keep pace with what's really happening in the world. And again, I know I've gone through medieval philosophy. I know there's a difference between people who study philosophy, a la like Socrates, Plato, Aristotelian stuff, and the scholastics who study theology. And there's two different mindsets besides studying for the truth and studying to understand supernatural law. For most of us, supernatural law is less of a pull and an influence on the humanism that's necessary for the planet. Those things don't feed us in the same way, and they don't have anything to say about nanotechnology and artificial intelligence and cyberspace and space age travel. And that's, of course, where we are and where we're continuing to head. Now, you can still find metaphoric value in that stuff, but they can't answer other questions, and that's not what they spend their time in researching. So again, if you can find time during your day to slip out of your involvement in the material world and do whatever you think you're doing when you're closing your eyes and doing silence or chanting mantra or just watching your breath or emptying or giving it no name, just effortless being, do that. And then when you come back into your eyes are open and now it's 9 to 5, I got to get my cup of joe and take the kids to school and, you know, go to the motor vehicles bureau and pick up the dog poop and make sure I pay the gardener and, like, you know, march, you just live your life. Is that Zen enough?
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you so much.
You know, and again, I'm from Brooklyn, and, you know, I didn't have to study mysticism to understand this, but if you can't find the extraordinary in the extraordinary, you'll never get this. All right, look at that, Laura. It's 1:30. I'm so professional, it's ridiculous. 12:30, unbelievable. I'll stay on a little longer if any of you have another question, but I know you have other places to go. And an hour and a half in front of a computer, it's really a lot, so I appreciate that very much. And I also invite, it's time for shameless marketing, because I don't hear another question, I'll just go on. Those of you who are not on my website, I invite you to go to gabrielhalpern.com, get some free pranayama videos, go to my YouTube station, cherry pick all the stuff I have, especially on affirmations. Just want to remind you, it's a great way to cherry pick the topics there. I got hundreds of them for you to have little snippets of 2 or 3 words together that will remind you, oh, that's a good way of phrasing something, and create your own I statements to feed yourself. Really, really important. That will help your loaded weapon. It won't shoot blanks, but it'll be loaded with Cupid's darts. How about that? You can shoot love into other people with the kindness of your phraseology and empower yourself to recognize, as my mentor said, appreciate the beautiful person you are and appreciate the amount of love that you have. The elders want you to recognize that, because the idea of, like, having an older person look at you that way, and are you willing to accept it? Because you have to accept this person is not going to bullshit me. They have no ulterior motive, right? The guru doesn't get a raise in pay when you get enlightened. They just want to see the beauty in you that they see shining. Shine more. Don't inhibit it. Don't hold back. Don't obstruct it. It's wonderful. And you have so much love to give and to receive, right? So go to the website, do that, and tell anybody else you think would be helpful. And those of you who can get in touch with me, I shouldn't have to tell you how to get in touch with me. You're a grown person. I bet you could find a way to get in touch with me if you wanted to. So the ball's in your court. Anyway, thank you, Laura. I appreciate very much your help in organizing this. And Becky and Gail, thanks for the behind the scenes help as well. I can't promise what's going to happen recording wise. That's for the administrative staff. I've done my thing. All right. And Laura is also going to talk to you at some other point through email or right now. We're preparing some classes for the future, are we not? This is a shameless marketing thing. Soon we'll have some. Unmute yourself, dear. There.
Unmute.
Okay, got it.
So you're going to update everybody with what we're offering soon?
Yes, Gabriel and I are looking ahead to craft some sessions that would be a combination of what we're doing here with some of Gabriel's wisdom and sharing, and then moving into a little bit of asana practice. So we're looking for feedback from everyone. We kind of have our blob of clay on the potter's wheel. We're looking for some shaping, and your feedback helps very much. We were thinking about the frequency of maybe every other week, getting together in this same time slot, and having these great lessons from Gabriel, and then doing a practice in our bodies together to kind of internalize and cook those lessons right on in. So if
so
you
what I'm calling, each class will have a Yana yoga theme, and each class will have a Hatha yoga theme.
Yes.
And Laura has boldly decided that she wants to be the asana model because she's a Star Trek fan. Boldly go where I've never gone before.
I don't know about that, Gabriel, but I am ready to step out of the comfort zone, as one of today's lessons talked about. So yeah, this is some growth for this shy little yogi here, but ready to take the next step. And we have a great group here. And if this resonates with you, we'd love to have you join us. And we'd love to hear your feedback on maybe what the right allocation of lessons teaching to physical practice. So we're looking for your input, and it helps us to be creative.
Because we're just a blob of clay.
We're blobs.
We're blobs of clay, ready to be molded. Okay.
And Laura, if we aren't on your radar, how do we get? I came to this today through Larry, and thank you, Larry, for for sending it to me. But I would like to be informed of other ones, so maybe just through Larry, I can get your contact or something.
Yes, or if you want to go in the chat feature, Sarah, you could maybe put your email in there if you feel comfortable with that. If anyone would like to do that, and then I can put you on our list, and then you'll automatically get the emails directly.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I'll put my email in there now too, and then anybody who wants to email me directly, you can also. I'll put my email in now.
And Gabriel, thank you very much. It was edifying and nurturing.
Oh, how nice. I'm an edifier and a nurturer. I'm going to add that to my CV list. That's great.
At least today you were.
Okay.
Isn't it just a general thing for the people who are in the kitchen there with me? Isn't it hard to come up with like cooking every single day now? Aren't you bored to tears with the stuff you're making for yourself? Have to come up with new things. So here's my latest quick sauce to save like a bland grain or a vegetable, right? You put in nut milk and a big dollop of pesto. So I know I've lost the people who like cheese, but you can get vegan pesto. A big dollop of pesto, and then mash an avocado into it. So it becomes an avocado pesto cream, like Alfredo fettuccine, but that's it. That's my cooking tip from. Hi, Muriel. Are you back yet?
Nope, I'm still in Mexico. I'll be back next Monday, very late.
You know, you missed Cinco de Mayo here. But wasn't too big in Chicago. Okay. Anyway, all right, good. Safe journey back. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day. Cheryl, get in touch. Larry, good to see you.
Bye, everyone.
Laura, let's debrief.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Gabriel. Thanks, Laura.